Welcome back. Now, let's take a look at how the markets have performed. It certainly seemingly has been a positive day to this trading picture, particularly now on this lunchtime trade, because it seems that the Biden transition news, the news as well, then that the GSA in the United States will allow Joe Biden to begin his transition formally, does mean that the market is beginning to see a fairness with regards to that U.S. election finally coming through. So that has boded very well for the markets. In fact, there's positivity across most indices here as well. The only red is the Shanghai Composite out in China. They're dipping down just over 0.33% at the close of trade, but the Hang Seng and the Nikkei following through there with some big numbers. The Nikkei in Japan, of course, having been closed just yesterday, today comes roaring back with a 2.5% gain there. So positive numbers on that front, 638 points gained. On the European markets, this lunchtime trade picture also sees positivity there. More than 1% gained across the board here as well, with the biggest gainer being the CAC 40 in France, that going up 1.4%. Also big gains as well for the FTSE 100 and the DAX, as they've ticked up there more than 1% each also. This has meant that we've also seen some positivity on our local bourse as well. 1.25% to the good is the JSE, sitting at 57,864 points as well. Then the big news yesterday was indeed around Naspers process, as well as the Tencent situation as well there. Profits going up, yes, but still Tencent being the bulk of the reason why Tencent had gone up. So what does that mean for industrials? Well, they're still seeing positivity there, nearly 0.75% to the good, in fact, but not too much to write home about on the other side. The financials have gone up 2.33%. That follows on from the banking shares, which have also managed to tilt higher today. So some positivity there. It seems that all the banking shares enjoying some positive momentum following through then from that US notion then of that successful transition perhaps beginning to take place somewhat, even though, of course, current President Donald Trump hasn't necessarily conceded that race as yet, even though it is nearly 3 weeks later from that election. In the resource front, well, gold mining and platinum miners have gone down, but the diversified miners have pushed the resource stocks higher. So it sits at 1.6% to the good, 1 2/3%, in fact, much better off over on that front. Even the listed property market going up today, so enjoying some positivity. Onto the shares that have gone higher today. Sasol has enjoyed some good numbers, nearly 8% to the good there, 125 Rand a share, so some good numbers for it, having seen it, of course, capitulate to around 30 Rand a share amidst the pandemic, and of course the increased news then of what happens out at the Lake Charles Chemicals project, which is now finally complete, and what that indeed means for the company. Of course, their base chemicals there has been sold off, however, to Lyndon Basil for a 50% margin there, so they're giving that away, but for now, still looking very good is Sasol. In terms of the property count as well, they've gone up 6 2/3% there. That's 2 Rand and 40 cents a share for redefined properties at present. In terms of the companies that have gone down, as I made note of, the gold miners and platinum miners not doing too well, so you'd expect them to sit in the negative as well. So DRD Gold has taken a 6.5% fall, so too has Harmony in a similar vein, 6 1/3% down. In fact, Pan African Resources 5.5% weaker, a similar drop as well for Sibanye Stillwater, more than 5% falling off there. To the commodities picture then, a good day so far for Brent crude, as it's gone up 1 2/10%, then sitting at $46.60 a barrel there. In terms of platinum, well, slightly down, demand falling off ever so slightly, while gold has also gone down 1.5%, sitting at $1,808 a fine ounce there. Some positivity then for the local currency, even if it is only slightly, 0.5% better is the local currency against the US dollar, so that'll cost you 15 Rand and 36 cents. A euro will cost you 18 Rand and 23 cents, 20 Rand 48 is the price of a British pound. Shaun Murison from IG South Africa does join us this afternoon to get a whiff of where this market is headed, perhaps, if that's even a possibility. Shaun, thank you so much for the time. Joe Biden finally getting word from the GSA that he can begin his transition officially, and he does that with resounding news then of Janet Yellen set to take over perhaps as the Treasury Secretary there. Does that bode well for the market? Is that good news?
Yeah, I think like you're saying on those indices, they're rocketing today. We've had some good news this week. We've got more vaccine hopes coming through. AstraZeneca, the last to add to the list. But certainly I think the market has certainly been pricing in a Biden win. Pretty shortly after the elections. But this, there's always that sort of what if sort of scenario, and I think as we, in today's news and that just becomes a bit more certainty for that marketplace, and it's and you're seeing a risk on trade where safe haven assets are coming off, and the broader equity markets undergoing quite a strong rally at present.
Did the market cheer the Janet Yellen selection, though, do you think? Is that perhaps a good move, not just for Biden's cabinet, but certainly even for the market structure, bringing back some sense of normality, somebody who has had a firm hand on the tiller before, even if it was just at the Federal Reserve?
Yes, I think it creates some type of certainty. I think there's a few positives there. Janet Yellen, obviously, having headed up the Fed, she's earned her stripes. First woman in Treasury as well. So, it's definitely been a contributing factor towards today's gains.
All right, so where to from here then? I mean, we've gotten a little bit of earnings news here and there, particularly on the local front. The likes of Naspers is coming out with some numbers yesterday. That tech share itself seemingly still relying heavily on Tencent. Have their investments really made sense thus far as Naspers, do you think? Or is it all just let's hope and pray that Tencent and that Chinese market continues to do well for them?
Look, Tencent is still, the primary valuation within Process and within Naspers. So, and certainly, if we want to look at Naspers' track record, that was a wonderful and amazing acquisition. Naspers earnings, obviously, they've reduced their holding in Process, so that that would be why the results didn't look maybe as good for them. I think what we need to so China is a huge market. Tencent is a leading player, especially in that gaming space, internet giant. I think where the concern comes is, when you look at valuations, markets have been rallying for quite some time. Tech valuations in particular are quite elevated. And so, it's can they maintain that momentum of growth to support their current valuations?
Yeah, it gets rather tough in this environment because one would have thought that it's just tech, but I think weariness from Naspers, the whole process does have quite a bit of money on hand as well to try and get into the acquisitive space, but we'll see how things fare on that front. Overall, though, let's talk the currency. Is this rand strength or perhaps dollar weakness, considering then that we do have a little bit of risk on trade at present?
Yes, so we can see that the rand, I think really the weekend data of another ratings downgrade, another two downgrades from Fitch and Moody's, you would generally see as a negative for the currency. So you can see that it's priced in a lot of risk. And so it's really looking to external factors now for direction. And the dollar has been on the back foot. With that risk on trade, we've seen a softening dollar. It's just really boding well for equity markets in general. It's helping our rand strengthen. When we, a little while ago, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we were chatting with, the rand was sitting in a short-term range between 16 and 18 rand a dollar. Now we consider that range, 15 rand 20 to maybe 15 rand 80, and it's really testing that lower level of support. The break below 15.20. Next target we have for that is possibly even a move below 15 towards 14 rand 70 per dollar.
Yeah. All right. Well, very interesting there. We'll see if it can maintain some sense of positivity at the very least going into the rest of this week. Shaun Murison, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. From IG South Africa, joining us there to unpack this market picture. That does bring things to an end then from me here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Thank you so much for joining us here on Point. My colleague Nompumelelo Sizeba gets to chat to the Transaction Capital CEO, David Hurwitz, right after the short break. Of course, things have certainly been difficult. COVID-19 impacting operations across the board, and they certainly were ones to suffer as well. We'll get into that interview after this. Do stay tuned to SABC. You're on Point. From here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, that's where the buck stops.